Summary of Sister Carrie by Theodore Dreiser. Sister Carrie is the story of Carrie Meeber, a young woman who goes from a small town in Wisconsin to the big city. Carrie has no money at the start of the book. She rides the train from Columbia City, Wisconsin, where she lives, to Chicago, where she hopes to find work. She is going to live with Hanson, her sister Minnie, and their daughter. Carrie meets a nice-looking traveling salesman named Druitt on the train. They start flirting and get to know each other. They make loose plans to get together. But when Carrie gets to Chicago and sees her sister's dirty apartment, she feels bad that Druitt should see her there. She writes to him to tell him not to come see her. Not long after moving in, Hanson makes it clear that he expects Carrie to pay the rent. So, Carrie looks for work in the industrial area for her first few days in Chicago. She is interested in the things in the big shops and the well-dressed women who are busy and don't bother to look at her as she walks around. Carrie has a hard time finding a job because she has never worked before, but she finally gets a job as a manual worker in a bulk shoe house. Although Carrie is thrilled to have a job at first, the boring nature of her job and the low pay eventually make her unhappy. Minnie and Hanson's cheap way of life makes Carrie's misery even worse. Carrie gets sick in the winter and can't work for a long time, so she loses her job. After she gets better, Carrie starts looking for a job again, but the thought of not being able to pay her rent and having to go back to Wisconsin makes her sad. Carrie finally finds Druitt after days of useless looking. The seller is as nice as ever. He buys her a fancy meal and gives her $20 to spend on new clothes. Carrie tries to return the money at first, but Druitt only buys her a bunch of trendy clothes and items instead. Because Carrie is so pretty and poor, Druitt feels compelled to offer to help her financially. Carrie decides to become Druitt's lover after some mental trouble. She leaves a simple note for Minnie and moves into the place that Druitt rented for her. Druitt keeps showing Carrie all the nice things about the city. Carrie starts to see Druitt's flaws over time. Even though he stays friendly, he never commits to the idea of marriage and always puts it off for later, and he is not sensitive. Around this time, Carrie meets her friend Mrs. Hale. Mrs. Hale takes Carrie for drives in wealthier areas and talks highly of the higher classes, making Carrie want more money than Druitt can give her. Around this time, Druitt puts Carrie in touch with Hestwood, who is his friend and runs a famous, fancy bar. Carrie likes Hestwood more than Druitt because he is more sensitive and classy. Carrie doesn't know that Hestwood is having problems with his family behind closed doors. His wife and kids are shallow and uncaring, and he doesn't feel like the real leader of his home anymore. Hestwood is quickly taken to Carrie's beauty and innocence as a child. Carrie and the boss start an affair behind Druitt's back after Hestwood tries to stop them. Soon after they start dating, Druitt gets Carrie a part in a play put on by the club that he and Hestwood go to. Both of Carrie's lovers are moved by her performance on the night of the show. Druitt decides to marry her, and Hestwood decides to steal her away from Druitt. The next day, the chambermaid tells Druitt that Hestwood has been seeing Carrie a lot and that they are having an affair. Druitt then tells Carrie, who is shocked, that Hestwood is married. Carrie tries to cut ties with Hestwood by writing to him. In the meantime, Mrs. Hestwood finds out from friends that her husband has been driving around with another woman. She then threatens to sue her husband for divorce. Hestwood starts drinking at his bar because he is upset. Hestwood finds that the safe, which is full of cash, is open as he is closing up for the night. Hestwood chooses to steal the money from the safe while he is drunk. He then lies to Carrie to get her to take a train with him out of town, saying that Druitt was hurt somewhere far away. When Carrie finds out that Hestwood was lying, she is furious, but she gives in to her lover's emotional pleas and promise of marriage in the end. Hestwood gives back most of what he stole, but he saves a small wealth for himself because the police and himself are after him. They become George and Carrie Wheeler and live in New York City. At first, Carrie is happy with her new life. Hestwood gets a job at a regular bar and makes enough money to support her. But Carrie quickly makes friends with Mrs. Vance, a neighbor, and learns that her life is nothing compared to her new friend's luxurious one. Horstwood loses his job when his business fails after a while. He tells Carrie to live on less money, which makes her even less happy, and the two of them grow apart. Mr. Vance and his wife take Carrie to a fancy restaurant one night for a very fancy dinner. There, Carrie meets Ames, who is Mrs. Vance's cousin, and tells her that money isn't everything and that she should do art instead. Carrie thinks Ames is smarter and nicer than Druitt and Hastwood, and she wants to win his acceptance. Mrs. Vance quickly leaves, which makes Carrie sad, and she is left to live a dull, lonely life with Hastwood. At first, Hastwood was excited to find a new job, but he quickly loses interest and decides to just stay home and read the newspaper. He runs out of the money he stole from the Chicago bar, so Hastwood tells Carrie she needs to find work and reassures her it will only be temporary because he will soon have another business to run. Carrie remembers how much Ames liked art, so she turns to the theater and gets a job as a chorus girl, even though it's not nearly as exciting as she thought it would be. Because she is so good at what she does, she quickly moves up the ranks and gets a good job with the company. Lola is a girl in the chorus who Carrie meets and becomes friends with. Lola asks Carrie if she would be willing to move in with her as roommates. Because Carrie doesn't like how lazy Hastwood is and has to do housework, she chooses to leave him and take Lola up on her offer. She sends Hastwood a short note with $20 inside. Now that Carrie is focusing only on work, she quickly becomes well known and soon becomes one of the company's stars. Soon, she makes more money than she can spend, and the news prints a picture of her. Carrie finally moves into a fancy hotel as a guest and brings Lola with her. She gets lots of notes from fans, but she's not interested in any of them. Hastwood, on the other hand, is sad and truly poor, so he takes to the streets and begs. Carrie has no idea that he ends his own life in a 15-cent boarding house. When Mrs. Vance, Ames, and Druitt visit Carrie, Druitt tries to win her heart again, but she turns him down. At the end of the book, Carrie, who is now very wealthy and famous, is sad and thinking about her life.
About the author. Theodore Dreiser grew up in the Midwest of the United States. His father worked in a mill and had a hard time finding work. He was a strict Roman Catholic. This made Dreiser think that his father's lack of work was related to religion. It was during this time that Dreiser also formed a strong desire for material wealth, which would later inspire his writing. Dreiser went to Indiana University for a year and then became a writer and moved to the East Coast. He read T.H. Huxley, John Tyndall, and Herbert Spencer when he was a young adult and came to believe in a materialistic view of the world, which says that people are powerless and completely controlled by their surroundings. Dreiser got married to Sarah White in 1898, but after 14 years they split up. Dreiser started writing Sister Carrie in 1899, and Doubleday bought the rights to sell it. But the company didn't want to because they didn't like how the main character of the book is never punished for being immoral, so they chose to limit ads for the novel. So, when Sister Carrie first came out, it sold less than 500 copies. Dreiser felt deeply depressed because the book didn't do well for him. Dreiser went back to writing stories and had some success with it until the Great Depression. Dreiser died not long after becoming a member of the American Communist Party.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.